Inshallah, we're reading from 2:252. We're loading the verses, inshallah. Can someone do that? Can someone load the verses in the VC1 dash chat?
Joy.
Joy, you want to read?
Yeah.
252.
Yes, please. Should I start now?
Yes, go for
Yeah.
it.
These are God's revelations. We recite them through you, truthfully. You are one of the messengers. Many messengers, one message. These messengers, we bless some of them more than others. For example, God spoke to one, and we raised some of them to higher ranks. And we gave Jesus, son of Mary, profound miracles and supported him with the Holy Spirit. Had God willed, their followers would not have fought with each other. After the clear proofs had come to them, instead, they disputed among themselves. Some of them believed, and some disbelieved. Had God willed, they would not have fought. Everything is in accordance with God's will. No intercession. Footnote. Oh, sorry. Oh, you know what? I'll read the footnotes after. No intercession. O you who believe, you shall give to charity from the provisions we have given to you. Before a day comes when there is no trade, no nepotism, and no intercession. The disbelievers are the unjust. God, there is no other God besides him, the living, the eternal. Never a moment of unawareness or slumber overtakes him. To him belongs everything in the heavens and everything on earth. Who could intercede with him except in accordance with his will? He knows their past and their future. No one attains any knowledge except as he wills. His dominion encompasses the heavens and the earth, and ruling them never burdens him. He is the Most High, the Great. No compulsion in religion. There shall be no compulsion in religion. The right way is now distinct from the wrong way. Anyone who denounces the devil and believes in God has grasped the strongest bond, one that never breaks. He is the hearer, omniscient. God is Lord of those who believe. He leads them out of darkness into the light. As for those who disbelieve, their lords are their idols. They lead them out of the light into darkness. These will be the dwellers of hell. They abide in it forever. Footnotes for 252 and 254. In keeping with the mathematical composition of the Quran, God has willed that the name of the messenger mentioned here shall be spelled out mathematically. The discovery of the Quran's miraculous 19-based code has been divinely reserved for God's messenger of the covenant. By adding this verse number 252 plus the geometrical value of Rashad 505 plus the geometrical value of Khalifa 725, we get 252 plus 505 plus 725 equals 1,482, or 19 times 78. Please see appendices 2 and 26 for the complete details related to the proven identity of God's messenger of the covenant, to whom this verse clearly refers. Footnote for 254. One of Satan's clever tricks is attributing the power of intercession to powerless human idols such as Jesus and Muhammad. Appendix 8. Thank you.
Hey, thank you
Awesome.
so much. Really appreciate that. That was very good. So we just read chapter 2, verse 252, all the way to 257. And it's only 5 verses, but it's actually like in other chapters, this would be like 20, 30 verses, to be honest with you. Does anyone have any questions or comments regarding the verses that were read?
I think 253 is kind of it aligns with the verses where it says make no distinction among God and his messengers. Where here we're seeing that, God himself can clearly make distinctions. I mean, this is one of the qualities of God, is that he's going to give every believer and disbeliever a rank commensurate with their belief or disbelief. And he's telling us that, there's these distinctions he made. But as far as we're concerned, if we look like 285, we aren't to make any distinctions, and one is better or worse than the other. I think of it in the same way for a believer. Like, I don't think it's right to say, oh, I think, Jeff is a better believer than, Navid. I think if we did something like that, in the sense when someone is a believer, I don't think that that's an appropriate thing. All we can do, in essence, is rank people in the sense if they're a believer, a disbeliever, or a hypocrite. That's my 2 cents, but I could be wrong because I could see how in the opposite, in disbelief, obviously, like someone like Pharaoh is going to be worse than you know a casual disbeliever. There's another interesting thing. It says, "Had God willed, their followers would not fought with each other after the clear proofs had come to them." It's interesting that the messengers themselves come with a unifying message. They say we're God's messengers. They use the plural, but it's always their followers who want to set distinctions among whatever messenger was sent to them, and that caused the infighting among the followers of each of the messengers. One thing that's it's funny. It is ironic. It actually says it in the verse. Is 42:14. I'm going to paste it into VC1 chat. Is ironically, they broke up into sects only after the knowledge had come to them due to jealousy and resentment among themselves. If it were not for a predetermined decision from your Lord to respite them for a definite interim, they would have been judged immediately. Indeed, the later generations who inherited the scriptures are full of doubts. It's fascinating that you would think with more information would settle disputes and reconcile, but the opposite happens. With more information, people become more contentious and more divisive. Like, why is that? Why is it that with more information, because you think a messenger, God sends a messenger to clarify matters, gives him, in essence, additional information, rather than unifying, this causes further division. Like, what's the root cause of that? What I notice in my own life is that when people have a common cause, it's unifying. That's why, like, if you have a common enemy, it's easy to unify around that. But when things are, how do you put it, calm, and you aren't in a point of or you're more in a point of peacetime, and the bickering and disunity becomes more prevalent. These are kind of like what you hear about first world problems. Someone in a developing country, if they're fighting to survive, their goals are so fundamentally different than someone who has too much free time on their hands. Someone who has too much free time on their hands is going to start bickering and complaining about the most mundane things. Oh, you can't imagine how long I had to wait to be seated at this, fancy restaurant so they can serve me this delicious meal. Oh, you don't know how long I had to wait to get on this plane so I could fly across the world at like 500 miles an hour. It's like these things that people bicker about. They seem so inconsequential when you miss sight of the bigger picture.
So Katerina made a really good point regarding 2255. I believe this is a direct refutation of the Christian doctrine. Do you want to explain it yourself, Katerina, or do you want me to elaborate on this for you? Okay, I don't know if she's here or not, but basically, this is a direct refutation. The Christians say that God worked for 6 days. On the seventh day, God and the angels got tired. They had to rest, and that's why Sunday is the day of resting. The Quran says that no fatigue ever touches God and the angels. If the no fatigue touches the angels, let alone it touching God, that's a really good direct refutation in the Bible. God knew what they're going to say and addressed it beforehand and directly.
I don't know if you can hear me. I would like to make a comment about the titles in those verses. No intercession for 254 that says, "All you who believe, you shall give to charity from provision we have given to you before the day comes where there is no trade, no nepotism, and no intercession. These believers are unjust." And the next verse says, "Who could intercede with except in accordance with his will?" Don't we see here the rule and an exception? When God said in 72:27 and 26, he is the knower of the future, and he does not reveal the future to anyone except to a messenger that he chooses, does he reveal from the past and the future. We all unanimously accept, yes, there is a messenger to whom he revealed the future. He revealed the future to Rashad Khalifa. He told him when is going to be the hour. But when God said, there is no intercession except for those he have, we say, no, there's no intercession. Or, I mean, are we rejecting here? Or we just ignore it?
Yeah, well, see, Dr. Khalifa was really clear on this, on how to understand that. And it's basically because of the situation where you will ask for forgiveness for your mother just because you love her. All of us, will do that with our family members. We'll want that. However, if it happens, it's only a coincidence. This is the coincidental intercession. It just appears as if it's intercession. It's just God was going to forgive them anyway, and you asked for it. So your prayer seems like it was an intercession. That is what this is referring to.
So basically, God is tricking you, making you believe that you interceded for your parents when you did not. Is that what he's saying?
No, it's not tricking. No, what I said is that, okay, what do you call the situation where you ask for something and it's actually just the same thing that they deserved and were going to get anyway? What do you call that? And that's what this is addressing. God's saying that is the scenario where your intercession looks like it came true. It's just God was giving it to them anyway because of their own lives and what they've done. That is what this scenario is describing.
Yeah, I'll give an example. So, say for instance, I tell one of my kids, "Hey, go clean up your room," and my other child says, "Go clean up your room." And she says, "Okay, I'm gonna go clean my room." Now, did she say it because my other child said it, or did she say, go clean up her room before because I said it? It operates in the same way. God's permissions, His decrees, has already been made. Now, if I ask for something that is in accordance with His decree, then in essence, I'm going to get that response. But it's not because of my asking; it's because it's in accordance with God's decree.
I don't think that anyone disagree that everything is in accordance with God's decree. That's not the debate here. Of course, it is in accordance with God's decree. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, is there going to be intercession? God said for some people, yes or no? That's the question.
If I give a response, again, it's if it's in accordance with God's will. That's the end outcome, meaning that yes, there's going to be intercession if it's in accordance with God's will. If you play that out, that means that if it's not in accordance with God's will, then there's going to be no intercession. At the end of the day, the determining factor is God's will. It's not the individuals. It's not any of the prophets, the saints. It's ultimately God is the only decider who gets to go to heaven and who gets to go to hell. Period.
Yep, I don't think anybody discusses that either. So you agree it's going to be, yes, intersection with the will of God. I'm fine with it. Thank you. That's not what people understood that Rashad said.
All right. So, okay. So we talked about 2253, talks about Jesus, how he is um, an honored prophet. Can anyone elaborate on that for me? I always didn't really understand it. Does this mean that because Jesus was born a prophet, he was designated as an honored prophet? Because it says, we gave Jesus, son of Mary, profound miracles and supported him with the Holy Spirit. So how is that special to Jesus? Because I would say the other prophets had profound miracles, right? So I always thought this is in reference to, look, he's speaking from the crib. He's doing something that they're not doing. And because of this, he was honored as an honored prophet. What do you guys think?
I I consider the fact that, say, for instance, Jesus spoke from the crib. I don't think he did that because of as a baby, right? I think this is um, God using the Holy Spirit to be able to perform such a thing. Um, that's one example that I can think of.
Well, I mean, we always speak of the profound miracles of what Jesus did. I mean that's part of the whole mystique around Jesus is how profound his miracles were. And so I would just say, you know, raising somebody from the dead, you know, and well, making birds out of clay, stuff like this. These are very profound.
Is it fair to say Jesus walked on water or no?
I say it must not be true because I think that's how we know. I mean, the Quran, from in my understanding, this is what the Quran is doing. It's telling you which ones are true, what is true. I wouldn't say that we could say that. That's
Would
just
say
my
I don't think we can say it is or isn't, just because it's omitted from the Quran. Doesn't mean it's not true. It just means it's not covered. So we can't say that it happened. But I think if we could take the other position, and say it didn't, I feel like the Quran only the function of it is to settle matters that are disputed. Um, unless there's some religious dispute to that claim, I would just say, okay, well, we don't know, right? So according to the Bible, that it's not confirmed in the Quran. We just kind of leave it at that.
I just wanted to read that verse to confirm what you just said. 53:26. Not even the angels in heaven possess authority to intercede. The only ones, in the plural, permitted by God are those who act in accordance with his will and his approval. Thank you.
I wanted to make a comment about 254, the first sentence. It says, "Oh, you believe, you shall give to charity from the provisions we have given you before a day comes," right? So that giving from provisions. It's interesting. There's two verses, 16, 96 and 97. What you possess runs out, but what God possesses lasts forever. It says, "We will surely reward those who steadfastly persevere. We will recompense them for their righteous works." And you'll see the same thing in 97. "Anyone who works righteousness, male or female, while believing, we will surely grant them a happy life in this world. And we will surely pay them their full recompense on the day of judgment for their righteous works." What's interesting is if you look at the Arabic of these two verses, the way it's written, it's as if basically whatever we do, God will reward us with the best of what we do. And then we know from 262 that God multiplies that manifold. And when we think of things in that context, you think of whatever the best food is that you gave to someone who is in need, that's going to be repaid back to you, manifold. Whatever is the best deed you did to help out someone else in need, God is going to give that back to you manifold. You consider like what Abraham did. There's two strangers, or sorry, more actually. The strangers are there. He invites them to a meal, and what does he do? He gets the best food he has, a roasted calf. And you think about the fact that he picked a calf. Calf has a lot of potential built into it. As it grows, it basically produces, value for the for Abraham. He took that and he prepared it for them. You think about what food, again, metaphorical, that Abraham will have in the hereafter for this one good deed that he did. When we think of things in that context, at least for me, it helps me think like, okay, how can I maximize the best I can do for someone else? Because ultimately, when I do that, God is going to give it back to me again, that level multiplied manifold.
I wanted to mention that 255 is the famous Ayatul Kursi. It's very prominent in, at least in Sunni mosques. And I find that it's extremely ironic that the very next sentence is, "There shall be no compulsion in religion." And literally, that's what we see in, it's like Saudi Arabia, in these Muslim countries. They feel the need to have compulsion in religion, and it's not as if they're not aware of it. It's right next to one of the most famous verses in the Quran.
So can we address that 256, please? This is freedom of religion, right? So we believe that we need to have absolute freedom of religion. Let me just read the verse. It says, "No compulsion in religion. There shall be no compulsion in religion. The right way is now distinct from the wrong way." This is very important because we have to believe in freedom of religion. So a lot of people keep coming here and ask, well, what do you do with apostates? People that leave the religion. The answer is nothing. We cannot enforce religion on anyone. This is emphasized also in 1099. If we take a look, let me just load that here. 1099 says, "Had your Lord willed, all the people on earth would have believed. Do you want to force the people to become believers?" So we cannot force anyone to be a believer. And yesterday it was brought up, well, what about people that insult the religion? Well, we have another verse for that. If someone can remember the verse about mocking, it says, if you hear people mocking, you need to walk away from them and do not sit with them and continue the conversation until they change the subject. It says, if you see those who mock our revelations, you shall avoid them until they delve into another subject. If the devil causes you to forget, then as soon as you remember, do not sit with such evil people. He has instructed you in the scripture that if you hear God's revelations being mocked and ridiculed, you shall not sit with them unless they delve into another subject. Otherwise, you will be as guilty as they are. God will gather the hypocrites and disbelievers in hell. You guys think about this for a second. Someone's mocking God's revelations. It says if you sit with them, you'll be as guilty as they are. We need to be very careful about that. We don't fall into this because that's serious. I don't want to be as guilty as someone that's mocking God's religion and revelations.
Yeah, I think actually I was thinking about this week. Like when we have people come onto the site and start blaspheming God, maybe we just say "Salam alaikum" and sign off, and that's kind of like the metaphorical walking away, rather than engage with it and give it any weight whatsoever.
Yeah, the only thing I can think about that is if we do that, then we walk away, we're conceding the territory. So then they get to continue in that. Rather, we need to address the problem directly and cease it. But the thing is, if the threshold, if the bar is just blasphemy, then we can't even talk with the Christians because pretty much their beliefs is just all blasphemy. So I don't know if it's necessarily just blasphemy. I think it's specifically mock and ridicule, right? Because then otherwise they can't speak. They say, well, Jesus is God. It's like, okay, well, bye. So I don't know if that's necessarily the bar that we have to set. It's specifically, I think, mocking and ridiculing. And I say this many times, like, look, there's many people with many crazy beliefs. We need to understand their beliefs and address them. If they're genuinely in belief of whatever they hold, then that's their belief. But mocking and ridiculing, to me, is a different issue altogether.
But we have seen mocking and ridiculing here. I mean, it does get to that place.
Yes. No, I agree with you. And it's my intention, God willing, to give such people time out for them to reflect and reform. And I urge others in positions of power to do the same. So for everyone that joined, Salam Alaikum, we read the verses from 252 all the way to 257. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the verses that were read? If not, we can just load the next batch of verses.
I got more to say. So in 255, I think this is another crucial piece. It says, "No one attains any knowledge except as he wills," meaning that all our work can be in vain if we're not committed to God alone. You think about how many people they got, PhDs and Nobel laureates and all this, worldly knowledge. When it comes to the right understanding, they're utterly lost. And I think this is something that we have to constantly be imploring God to keep us on the right path. But when we gain information, that it's actually going to draw us closer to God and not repulse us from the truth. Then the other verse 256, I think it's worth having a conversation regarding no compulsion in religion. The word for compulsion in Arabic basically it means making someone do something they don't like. That we can't force, in essence, someone else to take on, these aspects of morality if they choose not to. With the contingency, obviously, that whatever they do isn't going to impact the liberties of another human being. The Quran utilizes a non-aggression principle that individuals are free to do what they want as long as they don't harm other individuals in their actions. So if someone wants to disbelieve, it's their right to disbelieve. We have Surah 103. It says, "Oh, you disbelievers, to use your religion to us as our religion." That in essence, free to disbelieve, and we're free to believe as long as they don't infringe on our rights.
Could somebody speak on some of the things that have actually happened?
Jeff, go ahead. Navid, your mic's not muted.
Oh, yeah, I was wondering if you could speak on compulsion in religion and compared with some of the behavior that we've seen kind of poison our communities, where we have people kicked out of groups and not welcome in certain mosques and stuff. Is that? It seems to me it has to be a complete violation of this, even with subtle differences of understandings that we have.
Yeah, I have, my thoughts towards that. I don't really see that as a compulsion in religion. I think it can be. I see compulsion in religion more of a societal thing, where in essence, like a society, a government is forcing people to uphold their belief. I mean, you look at what they like in Iran. Saudi Arabia is kind of loosening the grip, but it's still similar. And I think that's 2256 is more aligned with that. What we see within just these various communities, I see this more in the sense of dismissing believers or calling people or offering peace that you're not a believer, 494 and 652. I see that more of a break commandments than a compulsion. But I do see in that aspect of, in essence, they do put, how do you put it, the elements of like groupthink and social pressure to try to gain conformity. So willing to speak what they know to be true.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to, was that groupthink pressure to have a compulsion of unified ideas. Yeah.
And I think that's significant, Jeff, because there's so much ground to cover, right? And it's not to say I'll never talk about certain subjects. For example, we disagree on circumcision but I don't make it my mission every single session, no matter what, to just push that until you submit, right? It's like we cover a lot of topics, but when you go into some of these communities, if they know you have a different opinion on a certain subject, they won't move on until you submit. They will break you, basically. And this is counterproductive because it's not even practical. We're talking about the prevailing of God's religion. And we have a masjid with thousands of people in it, right? It's like we cannot just conduct interviews on everyone, and it's just not practical to have an updated analysis of every individual's understandings on a variety of subjects. You know, people are free to come and go as they please, and the point is the greater point of worshiping God alone and devoting all our practices and worships to God.
You know, when I look at just a practical example of how they were doing it in Masjid Tucson or in the submitter community back when Dr. Khalifa was alive, is the Suzanne incident, where, I mean, he knew that she was saying things against him for a long time, but yet she was welcome. She was there. She could say what she wanted to the people, and his response was simply, you know, look, there are going to be some people representing Satan, and if you believe them, that's because you deserve to believe. But he didn't, like, you know, oh, so there's a guard at the door, keep her out. It seems, you know, that's that situation. But then at the other hand, there was his father, where he wasn't allowed in the masjid because of how he was um,
That's
opposing
not
his.
true. That's not true,
Oh,
Jeff. His father was allowed.
well, there was an incident. Okay.
No. We confirmed it. His father was allowed, and he even said, "My father's an enemy of God, a disbeliever, idol worshiper," and he was still allowed, and he left on his own. And
Oh,
his
okay.
father went out and said, "I'm not going to go to that masjid until you add the shahada or whatever." And Rashad said, "No way," and then he just left. He didn't force his father out. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
exactly what I'm saying. This is God's path. Everyone is allowed here. This is why I'm saying disbelievers, idol worshippers, everyone is allowed. Anyone can come hear the word of God and God's message. You know, we cannot ban anyone. And so when you're talking about people banning people from Friday prayer and Quran study and doing secluded groups, and this is cult. Our religion is not a cult. We don't want to be a cult. You know, we want to have open discussion, freedom of religion, and freedom of expression. We want everyone to be able to freely express their beliefs.
Mashallah.
I think it's worth pointing out, though, this is as long as the conduct, right, is appropriate. We had a guy show up at masjid once. The guy started, I'm not kidding you, started acting out 300 and then pulled out a knife. You can guarantee we did not allow him to be around. So it's like, uh, you know, the conduct is really what is going to be the driving factor. If someone comes on, has a completely, you know, contradictory belief, as long as they're abiding by the right conduct in the sense of not, you know, hijacking kind of the studies and, you know, pushing kind of the environment towards a toxic place, then hey, they can come and they can have a discussion, and, you know, converse. The verse that comes to mind, though, in the sense of Navid, what you mentioned regarding saying, look, you know, we have difference of understandings, but we're not going to make every single discussion about that point until you either concede or get out, is Surah 58, verse 11. It says, "O you who believe, if you are told, please make room, you shall make room for each other to sit. God will then make room for you. If you are asked to get up and move, get up and move. God raises those among you who believe and those who acquire knowledge to higher ranks. God is fully cognizant of everything you do." Imagine, you know, God is saying that, look, if someone's asking you to get up and move or to make room, it's our duty to do so. Imagine someone has a difference of understanding on some topic, right? And every conversation, we just keep hammering that person on this topic. And the guy says, dude, give me some breathing room, you know? God is telling us to physically get up and move if someone's asking us. What does that mean when someone is saying, look, I don't want to talk about this topic anymore? You know, to use your opinion to me is my opinion, leave it at that. We have to respect that. And this is in regards to a congregation. This isn't just someone in public. And I think that this is something that we have to be conscientious of. If someone says, look, I don't want to have that conversation, the other party, this verse, should respect that.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments about the verses read for a bunch of people that joined? We read to 252 to 257. If not, do we want to load the next batch of verses?
We didn't talk about 257.
Yeah, let's
Rim,
go
was
for
that
it.
you?
Go
I
ahead,
do.
go ahead.
Salam, I wanted to ask a question before you guys move on real quick.
Please do.
So you guys have a mosque in America, right?
Yeah, we have multiple.
Okay, because like my question was just like my mosque, like my brother went there to ask a question about hadiths, and they wouldn't they kept trying to press him to talk to a scholar, you know, and to go talk to a specific scholar. Like, so they brought up verses, and they believe like the hadiths are revelations. And so it makes it complicated, like for me to actually go and do my Friday prayer over there because, like, they don't pray the same way, basically.
Well, you're in the right place. We don't ascribe to a hadith, so we follow the Quran alone. And I've been there too. I used to be a traditional Muslim. You'd ask them about these the extracurricular practices that they have in hadith, and they basically don't want to have that conversation. They shun you. They only defer to the scholars. The scholars refer to have the conversation. We're a rare commodity in the sense of submitters, dedicated to God alone, following the Quran alone.
Mm-hmm. But
Yeah,
so how do I go to because I'm in Maryland right now, so how do I find a mosque like that?
I think in DC there is a submitter community. Are you? Do you call? Have you read the translation of the Quran by Dr. Rashad Khalifa? Are you aware of that?
I haven't read it, but
Oh, yes.
I started watching some videos.
No, mashallah, that's really good. We're happy to have you here. Inshallah, we'll get you connected with people and get that taken care of. God willing. Let's talk more after the Quran study. We can
All right,
get that
thank
sorted out for you, inshallah. Yeah, but definitely hang around and we'll get all of your questions answered by God's leave.
I want to make one more point before we move on, and that's 252. It says, "These are God's revelations. We recite them through you, truthfully, for you are one of the messengers." And so God gives us information through a messenger. The problem with the word "through" for us is that we don't go through a messenger to talk to God. God gives information to us through a messenger, but we go back to God, right straight to him, and there's no through going to God.
MashaAllah, very good point. So I have another comment here. So Tasky Task is asking about the shafa thing, intercession. He made a good comment stating that there will be intercessors at the personal level. Like for example, your tongue, hands, feet, hearing, sight, skins, etc. They will intercess, for you. They will bear witness for your deeds, etc. I think that's a good point, but it's not the only thing. He also gave the meaning of intercession that means to stand with, to stand up as a witness, to speak the truth. I wouldn't say to speak truth, but to stand with and to stand up as a witness. So it's not just your hands and your feet, which is a very good point, but we can't deny the fact that some people are actually trying to stand up as a witness to other people. That we can't just ignore that aspect that also exists. So for those people, God gives an answer. He says it in 2009 and in 28. So these are the verses in parentheses. It says, on that day, intercession, it says, on that day, intercession will be useless except for those permitted by the Most Gracious and whose utterances conform to his will. And the other verse says, he knows their future and their past. They do not intercede except for those already accepted by him, and they are worried about their own necks. So these two verses actually completely explain the way of intercession. but it's clear that it's not just only the hands and feet. It's just a matter of fact, matter of reality, that we do have people who try to stand, as a witness to other people. And so God addresses that as well. If you would only take it as the hands and feet, then God would have never addressed, Muhammad interceding on behalf of, then God would not have addressed that. But God addresses it in this way. So, yeah. So, like I said, the hands and feet, a good comment. That's not the only form that people do, right? So, for example, Abraham prayed of his father, and God is answering. Like in this verse, he says, Abraham cannot intercede because his father was already not accepted by God, for example. So that's the way of answering to God, also from God. Also, the other verse, which says, Abraham's intercession will be useless because Abraham's father is not permitted by the Most Gracious. So that's a good example, right? But the other way, like for example, if your mother makes it, if your mother is actually permitted and accepted by God, then the intercession is not, it. The intercession, except for this, then that the intercession will be now useless, but it will basically also be redundant. Whether you make the intercession or not is gonna go in anyway. So we need to look at the bigger picture. I wanted to comment that as well. Also, we had the verse with the freedom of religion in 2:256. But yeah, so that's a very good, very important verse. The context in that verse is about religion, which is already enough, but it also gives like the principle of the fact of maximum freedom in general as well, not just religion, right? So people have a freedom of thought, expression, and not just on religion. This verse is on religion, but it gives the principles, the basic principle of freedom in general. And then we also have another verse, 74:11, which demonstrates this. Some reason I can put it up. Right. It says, "Let me deal with one I created as an individual." See, so here we have the general statement. Yeah. So if someone has like a bad opinion on something that is maybe not even religious, God says, "Let me deal with the one I created as an individual." That's the way I see it. I just wanted to point out as well.
The only problem I got with you is when you said Muhammad, God never said intercession is not permitted to you, or the only time I permit you, or there's no use in here. It's intercession is only for intercession is only. This is neutral. Don't put no names when God has put no names. That's the only problem I got with your thing. Besides that, yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying.
There's an interesting verse in Surah 40, verse 7. It's the angels. It says, "Those who serve the throne and all those around it glorify and praise their Lord and believe in him. And they ask forgiveness for those who believe. Our Lord, your mercy and your knowledge encompasses all things. Forgive those who repent and follow your path. Spare them the retribution of hell." I see this as a prayer that's, again, in accordance with God's will, that God is going to spare those who believe, that he's going to forgive their sins if they deserve it. He's going to spare them the retribution of hell. And this is the thing, like we do these prayers that God willing correspond with God's will because we trust that God's will is what's best. Wanted to make a comment regarding 2:257. It says, "God is the Lord of those who believe. He leads them out of darkness into the light." It says, "As for those who disbelieve, their lords are their idols. They lead them out of the light into the darkness. These will be the dwellers of hell. They abide in it forever." And you think about the contrast between the Quran and the Hadith. Now, the Quran leads individuals out of darkness into the light. The Hadith leads people out of light into the darkness. Yesterday we had a long discussion showing, just the heinous depicted in the Hadith. Problem people make is they equate the Hadith with basically the words of the Prophet. Even pick out
Peter, you're really cutting out.
the
I'm really struggling to hear
words
you. You're really
Steady
cutting out.
My bad. My internet's bad. I'll stop there. That one.
Thank you. I think you were just talking about yesterday how the word of God or the hadith is equivalent, basically shown to be equal to the word of God, which is bad, and so we're trying to justify it the same way we would justify verses of the Quran for hadith. We're talking about the most heinous things, crimes, criminal acts, sexual abuse, just the worst things you guys can think of are in the hadith, and the traditionalists, unfortunately, are forced to defend these behaviors because they're attributed to the Prophet. Does anyone have any other questions or comments about this topic or the verses we read? Okay. If not, I'm loading the next batch of verses. Do we have a volunteer to read the verses? I'm loading it here in VC1-chat 2258. Can someone start from this verse and read, please? Okay, if not, I can volunteer. Abraham's courageous debate. Have you noted the one who argued with Abraham about his Lord? Though God gave him kingship, Abraham said, "My Lord grants me life and death." He said, "I grant life and death." Abraham said, God brings the sun from the east. Can you bring it from the west? The disbeliever was stumped. God does not guide the wicked. Lesson about death. Consider the one who passed by a ghost town and wondered, how can God revive this after it had died? God then put him to death for 100 years, then resurrected him. He said, how long have you stayed here? He said, I have been here a day or part of the day. He said, no, you have been here 100 years. Yet look at your food and drink. They do not spoil. Look at your donkey. We thus render you a lesson for the people. Note how we construct the bones, then cover them with flesh. When he realized what had happened, he said, now I know that God is omnipotent. Every believer needs assurance. Abraham said, my Lord, show me how you revived the dead. He said, do you not believe? He said, yes, but I wish to reassure my heart. He said, take 4 birds, study their marks, and place a piece of each bird on top of a hill, and then call them to you. They will come to you in a hurry. You should know that God is almighty, most wise. Footnote of 2259 says, the lesson we learn here is that the period of death, only the righteous die, only the unrighteous die, the righteous go straight to heaven, passes like a day. The 18:19 to 25 in Appendix 17. Any questions and comments about the verses we read? You don't have to come up and speak, but you can type it also if you do have any comments that you want to share, and we could broadcast your perspective for everyone to hear. So any questions or comments about what was read in these verses? 2:258 to 2:260.
Yeah, something interesting here. So when Abraham says, "My Lord grants life and death," right? This is an argument, it's a debate he has with this person. Abraham said, "My Lord grants life and death," and the other person said, "I grant life and death." And then Abraham said, "God brings the sun from the east. Can you bring it from the west?" The disbeliever was stumped. So something interesting here is that when the person answers, "I grant life and death," Abraham didn't argue with him back on that same topic. He didn't go back and forth on the same thing. He just switched to the next one, and more powerful one. He said, "God brings the sun from the east. Can you bring it from the west?" That was a lot more powerful. That one, this believer couldn't answer. That's something interesting detail here is that he didn't stick on that one thing and just argue back and forth. He just brought up a new, more powerful evidence, I guess.
A very good example of debating in the best possible manner. Nothing, aggressive about it. Very, just logical statements. Nothing heated. It's beautiful.
Also have a question, do we see Rashad doing the same thing during the Great Debate? I can't remember now.
Yep, we did. A lot of times during the debate. a lot of times.
Where you just
Um,
left the topic and then switched to a more powerful one?
no, not really. This is avoiding arguments. Basically, the guy will say, okay, the guy, let's say talking to a king who can kill anyone they want, who gonna let any kid that is born live or die, like what Pharaoh did, killing every boy that was born in that area. Moses was saved, of course. But what I'm saying is, you thinking I can do anything I want. If I want to kill you right now, I have you killed. This kid is born. If I want to kill him now, I got him killed. So if I don't want nobody to leave, I can. It could be he could be just killing somebody by just Abraham challenging him right in front of him. Avoid that. Don't bring no problems. If you were to challenge him in this, that think about that. Okay, show me how you grant life and death. He said, okay, you see this woman, this pregnant woman, that's my wife. Got kids. If the kid is born, I can chop his head off. I can chop this guy's head off right now. That would have been problems, right? Avoid that. Okay. How about the sun? What do? It's rising from the east. Can you make it rise from the west? Can you? You wouldn't take the challenge, but you could have taken the challenge of killing, of granting life and death, because that's what they believe. They believe they're the one that, Pharaoh believed that. We got an example of Pharaoh. He believed he was the one that granted life and death. So you avoid that to avoid really nonsense debate or harming other people by just challenging him in that thing. But Rashad said to the guy, where you got that from? Who told you that Muhammad was the last messenger? The guy didn't answer. Rashad avoided that thing. He avoided it. There was no answer to that. He avoided that thing and he went to the next one. I mean, numerous times throughout this debate, he did it. And or when he asked him, why do you not obey the messenger? He told you in the Quran, this and this and this and that. And the guy was kind of sad, was kind of looking down, was kind of sorry. And he said, and I said, just jump on to the next one. No answer. I mean, numerous times. Numerous times he did it.
Yeah. I had a comment about 259. It's talking about this gentleman who enters the town with his donkey, and then he's just put to death for 100 years. And then they're brought back to life. The donkey has the bones reconstructed, and then they're covered with flesh. The word flesh here is, I guess, the same as laham for the flesh of pigs, what we call meat of pigs. And so I would say that kind of tied it into the topic that I was interested in. But basically, the meat of pigs includes the flesh, because the Arabic word includes flesh for meat. And so I would say the skin is just part of the flesh. And so I would say skin is also prohibited, and just flesh in general. That was just an observation I had. Thanks.
But do you think the donkey was recreated without skin? Maybe. I had a comment regarding 2258, and it's this concept of controlling life and death. To Shake's point is that the king thought that he's the one who controls life and death, and rather than have the debate that it's like, no, dude, God's the one who controls life and death. Abraham just went to a more powerful, indisputable argument. But regarding the controlling of life and death, I find this verse fascinating. 3:154. So it says, after the setback, he sent down upon you peaceful slumber that pacified some of you. Others among you were selfishly concerned about themselves. They harbored thoughts about God that were not right, the same thoughts they had harbored during the days of ignorance. A quick question, is my audio better? It says my connection's good now.
No, it's really good right now. We hear you just fine.
Cool. Thus they said, is anything up to us? Say, everything is up to God. They concealed inside themselves what they did not reveal to you. They said, if it was up to us, none of us would have been killed in this battle. Say, had you stayed in your homes, those destined to be killed would have crawled into their deathbeds. God thus puts you to the test to bring out your true convictions and to test what is in your hearts. God is fully aware of the innermost thoughts. That, it's showing here that it's like these people thought they could evade death by not going to battle. God is telling them that, look, if you stayed home, you would have been crawling into your deathbeds if you're destined to die. And this is just a powerful argument in the sense that God is the one who controls when we come to this world, and He's the one who determines the exact moment we exit this world. Regarding 2259, there's an interesting mathematical uh, uh, sign here. If you get Surah 2, verse 259, so 2 plus 259, plus 100 for 100 years, you get 361, which is 19 times 19. If you put those digits all next to each other, so 2, 259, 100, that is equal to 118,900 times 19. And then if you add the individual digits, 2 plus 2 plus 5 plus 9 plus 1, you get 19. I'll put it into the VC1 chat.
Could you put it in the chat? I couldn't follow. But there's another verse with the God controlling life and death as well. It's in 3:156. It says, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim." It says, "O you who believe, do not be like those who disbelieved and said of their kinsmen who traveled or mobilized for war, had they stayed with us, they would not have died or got killed. God renders this a source of grief in their hearts. God controls life and death. God is seer of everything you do."
Yep. I mean, yep. The way people said it. Yes. You see, Abraham, he mock him sometimes, and the way he just says it could be to a mockery. He's like, okay, I wish you knew in your mind. Oh, I wish you. I'm not gonna go with you. You think you control everything? You think if you stay in your homes, you're gonna be saved? You think this and that? Like the verse he called it. Oh man, I wish you knew. I just wish that God could have killed you right now and could and make a bomb. You know, you gotta tell you we say I was a kid when I was told that that's a beautiful thing. Some man said to his daughter that wanted a man wanted to be married. He said, "No, you're not ready yet." He said, "No, Dad, I want to be married." He said, "Okay, food." They cook mom to cook some. They cook some food. He said, "Okay, the first man you go out and meet and convince him to come eat the food, he'll be your husband. You just meet any man that in the street that you like, and if you like him, and if you invite him at home, and if he comes and eat the food, okay, I will accept." And she left. They cooked the food. They set it in the kitchen. She left looking for a man, another man that would eat him and stole the food and eat it and ate the food. Outside looking for a man. She went around and looked for a man and met that man and convinced him to come home to eat the food. The man was convinced. He came with the same man who stole the food. So she went to the kitchen to get the food. The food was gone. She came and said, "Oh, I wanted to give you some food, but somebody stole the food. I know what happened." He said, "I am the one that stole the food. I'm sorry." You see, the man could have had the food legally. Now he committed a sin, stealing somebody's stuff that was destined for him to eat. But he chose to do it illegally. So it's telling you that what God's plans are okay, are here. But some people want to go around to find another way to get to the to circle around when he could get the food, get the woman, be rich because that was the daughter of the king. Now that he have stolen the food, he's not going to be rich because he ate the food. The food was for him, no matter what. But he's not going to become a prince or whatever. or rich forever. Just saying that, yes, uh, God's plans are here, but if you try to go around, you just be losing. Some of his plans, yes, you get it, but you get it the wrong way. You'll be sinning, eating it, while you could be, by the way, being invited nicely, come to the house and eat the food.
Marshall, thank you. Okay. So
Just a quick note, Jeff, if you can hear us, I muted because it kept thumping on your mic. If you don't mind muting in between, if you have a comment, I'll unmute right now. Go ahead, Navi.
yeah, I just wanted to comment on 260. This is a lesson for all of us that we cannot say that we're so arrogant that we do not need God's assurance from God. You hear this from a lot of people say, well, I don't want / need code 19. I'm just totally certain about everything. It's like, look, we have probably one of the closest people to God in the entire, human history, Abraham, saying, God, I just need some assurance from you. So we need to appreciate the miracles God manifests for us, and we all can benefit from reassurance for our hearts in terms of what God shows us and our belief system and our what we actually hold to be true. This is very important.
Yeah, it also has to do with if you get these miracles and you're saying like, oh, I don't need them, like that kind of stuff. It shows actually how unappreciative you are. When you look at the Quran, unappreciativeness is a trait of the disbelievers. So they actually expose themselves as disbelievers, interestingly. Let me put the verse, God willing.
Exactly. A lot of people say, oh, nothing can boost my iman. Nothing can increase my iman. I said, what? So God, you know yourself better than God knows you. He said, boost is the iman of the you. He said, uh, you are denying God, not even realizing it. I don't know. How can somebody say that? No, nothing can. When God said, I am doing it, you said, no, God, you can't. That's basically what he's saying. Or let me do that for you. No, God, you can't do that for me. You can increase my iman. What are you doing? What are you saying? That's what they're saying to God, not even realizing it. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Good. And I put the verse, by the way. So it's verse 34, 33 is in the chat. The fact that unappreciativeness is a trait of disbelievers. About that. That's the one. Also, the one like dude posted on the verse where the 100-year sleep and then the camel, the skin and that stuff. That verse like had these mathematical correlations with it in it, like 3 different ones, and they're very powerful as well, like 19 times 19 and a normal multiple of 19, and then just sum of individual numbers 19. So that's actually very powerful. 3 times made me think of this footnote where it says in footnote 27, 18, 19, Rashad said, the more unusual the events in a given surah, the stronger the mathematical evidence supporting them. So this is something that he has observed in the, concerning the mathematical miracle. And we see it in this verse as well. Like this person sleeps for 100 years. His donkey is like, I don't know what happened to his donkey. Like, did he get still alive? But basically, it's a very unusual event, right? And so probably that's the reason why it has such a strong mathematical evidence, just like what the footnote's saying here.
Did we read 261?
261. We read to 260. We did not read 261. If you want to load the next batch of verses, that'd be great.
I mean, we could continue talking. I think it's important. I'm curious why is it we have these three examples of Abraham's courageous debate. We have the lesson, the ghost town, then Abraham again with the birds. Like you have these three verses in context to life and death. I'm curious what you guys think the significance is in this portion of the Quran in this section. You have these three back-to-back examples. If anyone has any thoughts about that, because the next portion of verses is in the context of charity. So it's like, there's probably some significance here. If anyone has any thoughts on that.
Well, to me, I see that it's pointing out God's control of life and death, and every aspect of it, and that's all I see on that. But yeah, I'll stop there. Maybe somebody else has something better to say.
And actually, I just realized that we're in the second half of the Quran study where we're just open discussion for any verses. So anyone has any questions about any verses of the Quran, you can bring them up, type it in the VC chat, or come up and ask your question or comment regarding any topic, Quranic issue.
We'll stop for next week. We'll start from 261.
Yeah, God willing, that sounds good. So I was just making a comment regarding well, I guess I already made it. Basically, the meat of pigs. My understanding that encompasses the skin and all the organs. Yeah. So yeah, because there's this debate right now among submitters in terms of what is prohibited on the pig, and some people are saying, well, the organs are fine because they're not meat. It's not, but my understanding it is pretty much all the organs except the fat that is not prohibited.
Actually, I was in this topic as well. I was wondering, so if you remember, I was studying food and nutrition. I asked my professor, and he basically he confirmed organs are meat. Yes, they are basically the slight variation of the same essence. Organs are meat. Like the liver is basically meat. Yeah.
But if you're thinking about skin, the skin comes with a layer of fat. So, like pork rinds, I don't know how you could justify eating pork rinds. I don't know, based on that understanding, because it's got so much fat with it.
Well, but fat is lawful, right? So
fat is fat of. Oh, it's the other way. I meant the other way around. Yeah. Okay. Oh, gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, because if fat's lawful, then we have some submitters just munching on pork rinds.
I would say, my definition of meat, just like very simplistically, is if it's protein. If it's a protein, then in essence, I constitute it as meat. I mean, that's typically like what we associate with meat. We associate with protein. I could be wrong in that, but I say, okay, does the organs like the liver and stuff, does it contain protein? Yes. Does the skin, does it contain protein? Yes. Does lard contain protein? It's just lipids. So
yeah, it's not just. Yeah, you're right. And also, it's not just the proteins that are similar between organs and the rest of the meat. There's also other stuff as well.
I had a question about.
Go for it.
That God makes the laws and then God follows the laws. That statement, I've heard that statement before. And so then when you look at how he revived the dead, or what he does to bring back the skin and the meat on the donkey, and even like the sleepers of the cave, God does that. Do you think that means God does it in a way that doesn't violate the physical laws? You see what I mean?
Can you expand on that, Jeff?
Well, I heard Dr. Khalifa talking in a discussion about how God makes the laws, and then God follows the laws with His processes. Um, and so then, when I'm thinking about how uh, a person, how he would revive, take the birds and bring them back to life, or how he revives the donkey, or even how he suspends somebody in suspended animation, like the sleepers of the cave. You know, we may think that God just says be and it is, and it just is. But there's a whole discussion about God's process of be and it is, and how He's got a mechanism for it. And I was just thinking about, when we think how is God doing this? Maybe it's not even a good question to ask. Maybe you just say, well, God does it and that's it. But I don't want to create confusion. I just was saying that I wonder if the way we look at it is that God does it in a way that follows the natural laws that He created.
My take is God creates the laws, but He's not limited to anything. He could, alter the way He decrees. Um, but he gives this for us for the sake of, I think, assurances that God upholds His promise when He makes a promise. But to say that God is restricted by anything, I think that's I wouldn't make that statement per se, but God does give us these assurances.
Well, this is a discussion actually on one of the audios, and um, I should bring it up. Maybe it's not fair to talk about it unless I was to bring up the actual discussion and hear it. But the discussion leaves you thinking otherwise, because he says, yeah, well, of course, God follows the laws, in this manner. I don't know. I
Yeah, but
guess,
it's one of his laws that he gives miracles to his messengers to give them to show that they are authorized.
right. But does the miracle break physical laws? You know what I mean? Does it happen in a way, for example, perhaps it's angels interference, those are part of the mechanisms of how things get done. Angels, drive the wind, like, for example, how was the Red Sea split? Well, perhaps the physical laws aren't broken. It's just there's a mechanism, like the angels are actually doing it, holding it back, and this kind of a thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying that maybe our understanding on these things, we have to think of it in a way, whereas laws of physics and thing aren't broken, but yet there's other intervention. I don't know. I don't want to create a big controversy or anything.
I think I agree. I agree with you. Yeah, you're right. I agree with you. But yeah, yeah. You need to see it as, like, for example, angels have some kind of technology that they can, like. I'm using an allegory here. So, like, the angels have some kind of technology to split the sea. That kind of thing. So the technology is, how we use technology. It's not really breaking physics. We are actually using physics to do things. So yeah, I guess you're right. You can see it in that way. It's not breaking physics miracles, but they are using physics. Like, for example, like Jesus spoke in the crib, right? It's not like he broke physics there. It's just that the angel Gabriel supported him, and then he spoke, right? So there is like superhuman type of physics, right? And that's a miracle. Good point. Would you agree, Jeff?
Yeah, that's kind of where my mind was going as well. That absolutely, like, Jesus was supported by the Holy Spirit, and so I always saw, well, he was, manipulating the mouth vocal cords, using it, making it come out, making the words come out, even if it wasn't emanating from Jesus's consciousness. That's how I always understood that. I'm not sure how the sleepers in the cave were suspended there. That you would be freaked out if you saw it, they say, but perhaps you couldn't see that an angel was holding them and rotating them so their body didn't flatten out against the ground or something. There's a mechanism. I guess that I'm just saying that there's a mechanism of be and it is, and it doesn't, and perhaps it doesn't violate the laws that God created himself, that his mechanisms follow the laws.
So there's two ways of thinking about this. One is that, at the even before the Big Bang, when God made all the calculations, that he ingrained it into the fabrics of the cosmos, that, at the exact moment seismic events are going to happen, that the sea is going to part, and Moses and the children of Israel are going to be able to go on dry land. And it's going to drown Pharaoh and his troops. You could say that, okay, this was all manifested before that. So, through the laws of physics and plate tectonics, and this was all orchestrated. The other mechanism is that no, God intervenes and says, "Be and it is." And I think it's showing that both mechanisms are valid. That, the Quran, like take the example of the Quran, the mathematical structure that's embedded inside it. In order for God to be able to orchestrate this, he had to have directed the Arabic language. That's one mechanism. The other mechanism is like, no, God is all powerful. He literally said to it be and it was, and it constructed to the, whatever archaic rules the Arabic had at that time, that it's going to basically create a text that has this phenomenon in it. I think, we can go back and forth and argue it's one or the other, but my take is that both are valid when we're dealing with God.
Some saying that God was planning to drown Pharaoh. I think we got a better way of formulating it, of saying God have no plans to drown Pharaoh. God, if Pharaoh would have repented to God and worshiped God, he wouldn't be God. God, what do you call it? Ultimately drowned him because he refused, because he wanted to chase the people, the Bani Israel. He wanted to kill them. God stopped him. God did not plan to put anybody in hell or to make anybody reject or accept the thing. God plans is here. You go there, worship God alone, accept the messages of God and the messages of God. If you refuse, it's going to be consequences for you. That's it. That's a consequence of him refusing and not just staying in Egypt. Let him go. No, chase him. He would have stayed home. That wouldn't happen. You had to chase him down to get him back. Okay, so then I'm a drone him. So saying that it was God plans to drown him is like God have destined Pharaoh to be a thing. Where is the free will then? Where is the choice that we got? We're not destined to be believers or hypocrites or thing. We choose to be believers. Yeah, of course, God guides those who want to be guided. Of course, God misguide those who want me misguided. But it's on us, ultimately.
I'd say this concept of free will versus predestination is that, as far as we're concerned, we have absolute free will. We have the potential to believe, to disbelieve. As far as God's concerned, he knows what decision we're going to go with. And he's already accounted for it. In that Pharaoh had the potential to repent, reform, but he wasn't going to take it. And God already knew that, and God already accounted for that. I think the question that Jeff was posing was this already ingrained into the fabric of the universe, or was it something that God said be and it was, and then the sea parted, And again, Moses and the children of Israel walked on dry land. Pharaoh and his troops went; they were drowned. We can argue that point all we want. I think when it comes to the aspect of again free will versus predestination, as far as we're concerned, we have absolute free will. As far as God is concerned, God knows exactly who's going to make it to heaven, who's going to make it to hell. God is omniscient, all knowing. It's already written down. He knows all the multitude of different routes we could potentially go. He ultimately also knows which one we're going to side with.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear Jeff. I was disconnected. I had a phone call, so I had to disconnect to be able to speak to the person calling me. I didn't hear what Jeff said. I just heard you saying something about thing, and when I heard that it was in God's plans to drown Pharaoh, people might be understanding that. That's what I heard. I didn't hear Jeff to speak, so I don't know what was the point exactly. I was just reacting to what you said about God's plans. Sorry.
North.
The other thing I would like to say about this, the verse, whichever verse is talking about the 100 years, is it 259? Yes,
Yeah,
259. I've stayed in here. He said, I've been in here a day or part of the day. And he said, no, you have been here 100 years. I mean, I did just, okay, no, I just trying to figure out why every time it is translated years, years, years. When God said, yeah, he uses the term arm, not sanat, in this verse. Arm. The arm is used. God using two counts of use in the Quran. His sanat is translated use, and his arm and is translated use. Now I'm realizing that every time he uses arm, it's either about death. Every time he said, "No, you died for 100 years, and I resurrected you," or "You died for this," it's always arm. When it comes to this world now, in here, living, it take them like the age of maturity, 40 years, sanat. It took the angels so many years to go up. Um, uh, I put 40 years between Moses and Pharaoh. It's all sanat, sanat. So realizing that when he said, he used the two in chapter 29, verse 14, Aram and Sanat, that Noah stayed with them 1,000 years minus 50 years. And in 25 and in 1825, he said the kids stayed in there 300 Sanat years. They added 9, and we know the 9 they added is to make it 309 lunar years. So basically, I'm understanding that when God uses sanat, he's talking about solar years. When he's using arm, he's talking lunar years. And lunar, he only using it for worshiping God when it comes to when he's Ramadan, when we go to Hajj. It's all those years are counted in arm, lunar. And anything else, or how long you died, it's going to be in arm, in lunar. But everything else for this life, for how long it take to go from here to here, for at what age are you responsible, or anything else, is going to be solar, sana. The curious thing is, if you divide the word, if you put the numerical value of sanat is 115 by is 111, it's going to give you 103. And that's exactly what it is between, if you divide 309 by 300, is 103. That's also what you got by dividing 365 days a year by 254 days a year. It's going to be 103. Just to show you that, yes, that is the relationship between the solar and the lunar year throughout the Quran.
So that's really interesting. Yeah, which so for how do you spell it? Because there's different spellings in the Quran for and I'm curious, are you using one aleph or two? If you recall, God, I'll check it myself, but that's a really interesting point. Mashallah. Anyone else have any comments, questions, or topics they want to discuss?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted.
So do you guys know how we have to seek refuge in God from Satan, rejected when we read the Quran? In verse 1698, right? So in verse 2397, it says, with the subtitle, it says to be protected from Satan. So, and it says, say, my Lord, I seek refuge in you from the whispers of the devils. And then the next verse it says, I seek refuge in you, my Lord, lest they come near me. So I'll post the verses here. Just,
Put them into VC1.
yeah, this one first, and then. So here this verse commands us to seek refuge in God, right? And then in these verses, the next ones, it tells us exactly how to do it. Is that true? Is that the case? That's the question. Because we usually don't say the last two verses, right? We just say the first.
I think, in my opinion, if you look at 1698, it doesn't tell you exactly how to say it. And I don't think that there's just one way. There's a multitude of ways you can seek refuge in God. I wouldn't say it's limited to just 239798. 239798 is something I do say many times. But I can't say definitively that that's the only way that we can seek refuge in God.
Well, you can see that from Surah An-Nas as well. It's like, A'udhu, I seek refuge in the Lord of the people, the King of the people. Yeah.
And Surah Falak too, like from the evil among his creature.
I take 1698 as just again general in the sense that we should consistently be seeking refuge in God from the whispers of the devil.